So if I had to redo my thesis again, this is what I would do. Hey Kings, so nice to see you all again. I see some new faces here. That was a little cheesy, I'm so sorry. Hi, hello if you're new here. My name is Sabo, my pronouns are they, them, and on this channel I do whatever I want. And as you can already see from the title and from the intro, this video is going to be about what I would do if I had to redo my undergraduate thesis again. So for some context, I graduated the bachelor's Japan Studies from the University of Leiden. My thesis, Hip Hop in Tokyo, Negotiating Authenticity Through Social Media, was graded a 7.9. I'm still kind of shocked that I got such a high grade. So in this video, I wanted to share some of my experiences and talk about some of the tips I would give myself if I had to do or write an undergraduate thesis again. In the process of writing my thesis, I was scrolling on YouTube trying to find videos on, some tips and tricks and advice on writing an undergraduate thesis specifically. There isn't a lot of content for what I could find. So that's why I'm making this video in the hopes that it can be helpful to some of you watching, one of you watching. And if it isn't helpful at all, please let me know what advice you would give to someone who's watching or scrolling the comment section right now. Before we get really into it, I would like to preface that writing a thesis, irregardless of what program you are in, what topic you are writing on, about what type of research you are doing, your thesis is going to be one of the most personal works you're going to be writing in your program. Therefore, there is no single advice or template that is going to apply perfectly to what it is that you're researching. In this video, I'm going to be sharing my experiences and the advice I could give from that. So yeah, take what resonates and leave what doesn't. And again, if you have any more advice or you disagree with things, leave a comment down below. Let's talk about it. With that being said, let's get into the video. So where you would ideally start is your syllabus. Look at the syllabus, look at what the requirements are, what you need to do, any technicalities, so it's font, word count. If there's a specific type of research that you need to do, make sure you first understand what it is that your university or your program asks you to do for your thesis. So in terms of supervisors, this is going to be very program specific. My program did something very different. We were a very experimental year. My program emailed us a list of supervisors who were willing and able to supervise our graduation year and all their specialties and themes that they would be focusing on. So we had to pick a top 3 based off of that list, write a short motivation as to why. Yeah, we would get sorted accordingly. So I was put with a supervisor who focused on Tokyo, the city. And as such, everyone under her supervision, because we were all sorted into groups, would have to choose a topic that centered Tokyo. We could talk about whatever we wanted as long as it had to do with Tokyo. So before the semester started, because undergraduates usually have 1 semester to work on a thesis, not a whole year like a master's. So a week, maybe 2 weeks before the semester started, and before we had our first session with our supervisor made a list of articles that we needed to read that were about Tokyo in one way, shape, or form, so that we could already familiarize ourselves with the city Tokyo and what we could talk about. It also gave us a bit of insight of what our supervisor expects us to kind of do. She also had us write a really short paragraph just naming some of the interesting things that we noted while reading some of the articles. If we had already a theme in our mind about what it is that we wanted to write about, we also had to write about it really shortly and hand it in before our first session. And then during our first session, she had us all talk about it and kind of share each other's perspectives, give feedback on some of it, for her also to get to know us, what we are really interested in. So that is what my supervisor did. This is all dependent on program to program, supervisor to supervisor. I'm telling you this because this was a really good way to start a thesis. And this is where I would start if I had to do it again. And that is by exploring and familiarizing myself with the topics of interest. Write a little bit about it, and then if possible, talk about it with a group of peers, maybe your classmates, but whom you're sharing your supervisor with, maybe classmates who have a different supervisor, maybe other university mates, or just your friends outside of university, just like talk about it. Writing and talking is something that I will repeat a lot throughout this video because these were actually the main things that really helped me progress. And I also think that they're very key and vital in the process of writing anything. And this was also very much the work way of my supervisor. My supervisor really emphasized the importance of sharing your ideas with other people, especially people who have no prior knowledge of your chosen topic. They reasoned that by trying to make your ideas and concepts and your topic of interest understandable to someone else really reveals your own comprehension of it. And getting feedback from people also really helps you understand where you are in the process and where there are gaps, also where your interests really lie, because oftentimes when you speak about stuff, the first things that you try to prioritize are the things that you enjoy the most. I will come back to this many times in this video, so hopefully you don't get sick of it. If I haven't already had a specific theme that I really wanted to write about or a specific topic that I really wanted to write about, I would ask myself, well, what do I like? What am I interested in? Were there any specific seminar papers with topics that I would like to dive deeper in? Did my minor or any of my elective courses sparked any interest? Any books, podcasts, maybe some conversations you've had with your peers? I would take some time out of the day to really think about that, grab a piece of paper and just write everything down. And once I get a good amount on the paper, and this might sound very counterintuitive, I would walk away from it. I give it a day, maybe a day and a half, and just like not think about it. If any more ideas or interests pop up, I will come back and write it down, but then I will leave it alone. And then after like the day or the day and a half, I will come back to the list, look at the list and see, okay, what still resonates and what doesn't. And I just like go in. From that, I try to make like a top 5. If I have like a really long list, a top 3 even better. So from that top 5, I am going to try to seek out sources of information to help me familiarize myself with that topic and to vibe check as well. I like the idea of it, but am I really, really interested in it if I know more about it? And instead of going to your library or to an online database, go try looking for those sources of information via mediums that you already use in your daily life. So for me, for example, I will go onto YouTube and try to look up any videos, familiarize myself with the topic in a kind of lighthearted and also a fun way. Just pick like one video, one source per topic. And then I give myself a day or two to watch the videos, listen to the podcast, magazine articles, going through Tumblr to look through like the pictures. Tumblr, that's very dated. I'm sorry. Going through Substack to read like the mini essays. While doing so, take note and write down any points of interest, any curiosities, and keep asking myself, do I find this topic interesting enough to watch another video? To listen to another podcast, figure out which of these topics make me curious enough and excited enough to explore further. Hopefully by now we have condensed our topics of interest down to 1. 2 is also fine. It's always good to have a backup. I'm going to write like a short paragraph, maybe 200 words on what I know about the topic and why I'm choosing this topic specifically, and also what is it that I'm really curious about. Yeah, I would make it a habit to write as early as possible. The earlier you start, I guess, training yourself to write down any and all thoughts, the easier it's going to be for you later on in the process. Preferably, I would say pen to paper. I know Rachelle in theory and Fraza have really great videos explaining the why behind writing pen to paper, but whatever works for you. Your notes app, voice to text, voice notes, whatever works for you, use that as long as it doesn't stay in your head. So now that I've gotten like my little paragraph ready, my little pitch, I'm gonna go out and try to seek counsel. I would like speak to my peers in my supervisor group during one of our sessions, or talk about it with my supervisor themselves, or my friends outside of university, my friends in university who do something completely different. Like, try to talk about it and don't be ashamed to not know everything, because that's the whole point. Get their comments, get their feedback. Again, note it all down. Note it all down. So I guess by now, hopefully we will have like a bunch of notes. Here, I would advise you to use any digital note-taking program. Take an evening to put all the notes that you've gathered, paper, on your phone, on your tablet, wherever, whenever. Come on, Shakira. put it in your digital database. This is going to be your headquarters for the rest of your semester, for the rest of your thesis writing. I used Google Docs the first time, so I would have like a mother document, and then I would have like a shit ton of tablets with all my brain dumping notes, my supervisor group notes, feedback notes. I would basically do anything and everything in that document, including writing my thesis. But if I had to redo it again, I think I would use Obsidian. But again, whatever works for you. So the next part is going to differ from program to program and supervisor to supervisor. My supervisor specifically made us write a literature review before having us figure out our research question, because it gets you to explore the landscape of your topic first and properly as well before figuring out what it is that you're really interested in researching. So as I mentioned before, for undergraduate theses, we had 1 semester to work on it. For a Dutch university, 1 semester is around 17 weeks. How my supervisor divided that up, we had 2 weeks of orientation, 3 weeks of literature review, 7 weeks first draft, and then 4 weeks to the final deadline. So I think the best way to start, look at all the notes that you've made, kind of scan through them and look for any keywords that you can use to look into your library database, any other online academic databases to help you find relevant secondary sources. Now, my librarian gave us like this thick of a stack of papers, all tips and tricks on how to navigate these databases. I'm also a Japan studies student, so within that, there was also a lot of advice on how to navigate Japanese academic online databases. That really helped me in the process of searching for sources. And that being said, if you need help in terms of looking for your secondary sources, please, please, please turn to your librarian. Your librarian is going to be your best friend in this process. Your librarian is going to be the fucking Gemini ChatGPT you need to figure out where you can look, what you can look for, what your library has, and what your librarian can do for you in order to get certain sources that you do not have access to. Really lean on your librarian. They truly are the data centers that this world, our economy, needs to pump our money back into, because they, like, my librarian has saved my shit so much in finding out where the fuck I need to look and what the fuck I need to look for. So, and then also important, have a reference manager. I use Zotero. I like the interface. It does what it needs to do. No whistles or bells. You can adjust your referencing style and it can be integrated into Google Docs and Word. You can reference as you go, which is really nice. And it also automatically generates a bibliography for you, so you don't have to do that shit either. But again, whatever works for you, works for you. Just make sure you have a reference manager. And then next, I would plan out a timeline. I would do this for every step of the way, but yeah, the first time, listen, I did my thesis on unmedicated ADHD vibes. And let me just say, the vibes were not immaculate. In fact, I handed in my literature review at 10 a.m. in the morning. And then like 3 hours afterwards, I had to give a presentation about my literature review. If I had to redo this again, I would have a proper timeline. So I would spend the first week using the keywords that I've jotted down earlier to look into the online databases and search for sources. Instead of like trying to gather a bunch of sources at once and then going through them one by one, I would actually go and choose 5 sources, set an evening aside to go through them. Note like any repeating patterns, such as publication dates, authors mentioned, keywords. Make note of anything that you feel like is repeating and write that down. Also, while you are reading your articles, make sure you are also writing down what the article was about, what the purpose of the article was, main findings of the article, what the article says about the actual landscape of your topic, and any points of interest that you found interesting about the article. Note that all down. I made like a table. I would have the author, publication date. I would like gather in quotes, points of interest, notes. I would just dump it all in there. It was a really clear view for me to collect information for my literature review. I know another friend of mine used Excel. So again, whatever works for you. And the most important thing when reading an article, read the footnotes, because that's where all the tea is at. That's what my literature lecturer told us. Like, always read the footnotes. Make note of what is being said in there that might be interesting or that you feel is relevant to your topic. Make note of any other pieces of work that they are referencing. Now, after I've read the 5 sources, instead of going back to my online database, I'm actually going to look at, again, the footnotes and the bibliography of those sources to see if there's anything interesting or relevant for my topic I can look up online and see if my university have access to. And that's how I would gather my next 5 sources. At the end of the week, I'm going to like sit down with all my notes and look at the general picture these sources and my notes are kind of creating. What does everything that I've read tell me about the topic of my interest? And I'll start writing about it. And this, my kings, is the beginning of your literature review. So we started. Starting is always the hard part, so it's very important to keep in mind that every stage does not ask for perfection, it asks for curiosity. So make it messy, make it fun, get your peers together to body double and then kind of like key with each other about the things that you find and make it very engaging and interactive. I feel like, doing your thesis is already such monotonous work, really, when you think about it. So try to, make it fun where you can. Now that we have like a general picture of what the landscape looks like, now you can look at where your curiosity lies. What questions do you have? What connections can you make where you're like, oh, this seems to connect to this, and I think that's really interesting. What more can I find about it? That's where I would spend like the second week of my literature review, trying to look at the areas of interest where I feel like I'm being led into. I think it's important that in every phase, but especially this one, to ask yourself like, okay, what questions do I have? What is making me go like, this doesn't really make sense? Oh, why is something like this happening? Or all the publication dates are pretty old. Are there any more research, or is there any more research where this knowledge is applied to more current circumstances? So for example, in my case, when I was writing about Japanese hip-hop, a lot has been written about Japanese hip-hop. It's not really a big field of studies, but there is already a significant amount written on it. But what I thought was really interesting is that a lot of the sources were published pre-COVID and the social media monopoly on the hip-hop subculture in Japan. That's where I found my gap of literature. Yeah, my gap in the literature. And I think that's a good thing to kind of try seeking out for yourself. What am I missing? For example, like me making this video because there wasn't enough videos on how to write an undergraduate thesis, right? Which advice I could use. The gap in the literature. Try to think about it like that, because I know like everyone says like, yeah, you have to seek for the gap in the literature, and it feels like such a huge task and like you're being asked to invent a wheel. That's really not the case. The gap in the literature can be found in the most obvious and also random of places. So the only way to find out about that is to keep asking yourself questions. Writing a thesis in general is not about reinventing the wheel or inventing the wheel. That's a PhD. We're not there. What a thesis really is about showing that you are able to research complex research topics, your ability in applying the acquired knowledge, and how you are able to translate your comprehension on all of it into something that's understandable to a reader that has no prior knowledge. So that's how I came to understand what the function of a thesis is. There's no need for perfection. In fact, I think that's the beauty of academia as a whole. Academia does not seek for perfection, but it does seek for you to ask the next question. And it should always have you ask another question, in my opinion. So yeah, to kind of TLDR for your literature review, look at your notes, look at your articles, follow the footnotes, follow your curiosity, take note of everything that you come across. Yeah, I wrote in here like, keep taking notes of any repeating patterns, questions that arise, perspective that you didn't consider before, anything that makes you tickle, make a note of it. And then I would plan like maybe a day in between to like zoom out of the rabbit hole that you just put yourself into. Instead of like looking through all the new secondary sources you've gathered, look at what you've already written down, look at your database. Hopefully you have put all your notes into your headquarters. Go through all the notes, look at what you have, see where things are connecting, where you have led yourself into. And then with what you have already, try writing a really small passage, summarizing everything, and then talk about it with someone. again, write and talk. And this is the applying your acquired knowledge, right? And then this can also help you write out your paragraphs for your literature review. Also a good note, when you try to draw connections with stuff, make a mind map. Make a mind map. Mind maps are a fantastic activity for this. It forces you to kind of look away from the text left to right, right to left, up and down, Japan studies. But it forces you to kind of look at your information through a different type of visualization. Mind maps, fantastic activity, would recommend everyone to do it. The last week, that's where I feel like I would put a full stop for gathering any new information or looking for any new sources that I can read. This is where I would take every note that I've made, every summary that I've written, every conversation that I've had. I would take everything that I have in my database and start forming it into comprehensive paragraphs. Start actually making it, into a proper document. And also the biggest advice that I would give you for your first submission, write like yourself. Don't be ashamed of the way that you word things. Don't be ashamed of writing things down in a way that, I know right now the use of AI is so tempting. It's so fucking tempting. I have been tempted before. It's not about having your thesis or having your literature review sound scholarly. It's not about the aesthetic. This is a very personal piece of writing because it reveals a lot about your own comprehension, about your skills, which is very vulnerable, which is very daunting. And I know it's very tempting to use AI to kind of, make you feel less ashamed about yourself, because that's kind of that's kind of the trap that I fell into. Don't be afraid to just show up as yourself on the page. I think the whole point of your thesis is to show where you are with understanding your topic. Don't be afraid of yourself, and don't be ashamed of yourself. Okay, so literature review, hopefully done. Hand it in, submit it. Your supervisor is going to take a few days to read it and give you feedback on it. Now, what my supervisor did, she had us hand in our literature review at 10 a.m. in the morning. On the same day, we had a session together. And then during that session, we had to present in 3 minutes. Or less, preferably, present our main findings. I would recommend you do this as well. Even if it's just with your friends or your peers, try to make a little presentation about your literature review in 3 minutes or less. It's really going to help you with understanding where you are in the process and what you can work on. And also where your specific point of interest are, because once you have less time to talk about stuff, you're going to prioritize the things that you think is the most interesting of all. Make also note of the feedback that you're getting, any questions that they have, anything that they feel like is interesting, or oh, we don't understand that. Take note of it all, because this is going to help you with writing your thesis. And after that, while you're waiting for your supervisor's feedback, give yourself some time to breathe. Go watch a movie, go hang out with your friends, do something fun. I would say though, little caveat, try to still be engaged with your topic in more lighthearted ways. The YouTube videos, the podcasts, the pictures, the Instagram reels, the TikToks. You don't have to be fully committed like this the whole time, every day. But yeah, just try to still be engaged with your topic in a fun way. I think that will really help keeping the joy. And if there's anything interesting that arises from that, note it down in your database. Okay, so feedback is in. What now? Scream? Cry? I crashed out in peak unmedicated ADHD fashion. Took a few days off, and then I got myself together and realized it's really not that deep. Feedback is here to help you, and I know that there are some of us, me included, me very much included, have never learned the difference between punishment and feedback. I'm just here to remind you all that feedback is here to help you, and it's not to punish you. If I were to redo this again and get my feedback, what I would do is I would have my friend with me and go through the feedback together. I think that would really help me next time not crash out. So after the feedback, and you've noted everything down and you did what you needed to do, now it's time to figure out your research question. Now, you have your literature review, which already is a very solid foundation. You have your notes, and there's a lot of treasure in that as well that you can work off of. So use all of that to help you figure out what it is that you want to research. Start formulating your question. Now, there are tons of videos on the internet. There's also tons of websites and resources. Also, your library, I think, also has resources as well that will tell you or advise you how to properly formulate a research question. My supervisor specifically really dislikes research questions that start with how, because according to her, she says that's too vague. So my research question for my thesis was, what role does social media play in negotiating authenticity within the Tokyo hip hop scene? By not using how, I'm basically showing you what it is I'm specifically researching and what it is that I'm not. And my supervisor is of the opinion that how is just too broad. You can go into any and all direction. And it's not really clear as to what it is you're specifically trying to focus on, which is very important, not only for you as a researcher, but also as a reader. We probably all have read many an article where we're like, okay, but what the fuck is this actually doing? And what the fuck are you actually saying? My supervisor gave us the advice, never use how, always make sure you're able to create a research question that's as specific as possible. That being said, don't hold too tight to your research question that you've made right now, because baby, your research question is prone to change. And if you try to hold on to it right now as tightly as you can, you will be holding on to dry sand. Anyways, what my supervisor had us do is we had to come up with 3 different research questions, or like 1 research question and then 2 sub questions with a short motivation as to why specifically this question. So relevance is difficult, and potential primary sources that we want to use for our analysis, because we had to apply our knowledge via analysis. Relevance, I think this is something I will still struggle with. How can I convince other scholars to bother with my research? Why should people read my research? I kind of tried to figure this out on my own by looking at a shit ton of examples. Next time, I think, yes, I would still do that, but I would also try to talk with my peers, explain to them what it is I'm trying to research. By having their feedback, I think it would give me really good insight as to why my research could be can be relevant. So after having done all that, your research questions, relevance, potential primary sources, get your supervisor's approval on it, and then it's time to rumble. Okay, so now at this point, this might feel really overwhelming, because now you're really getting into it. Now we're starting the thesis. Well, we've already started it, but like, fear not. This might feel intimidating. It looks a lot more intimidating than that it actually is. One, you've already started. You've already written 25% of your thesis, which is your literature review, and you have a whole database of notes. That database is going to keep growing, and you're going to keep adding to it. So you also have a research question with sub-questions. You have a list of potentially or maybe already fixed primary sources that you're going to be looking at. So I would say we're halfway there. And yeah, the next half is going to be the most challenging part, because it's going to be the most boring part. Now, most supervisors have you figure out an outline first and submit it. Our supervisor didn't ask for that. So we had to make one, just for ourselves. We didn't have to submit one. Again, refer to your syllabus, to what it is that needs to be put in your thesis, what kind of research you need to do, font size, word count, title page, all that. Oh, reference style as well, and then start a document. So how I like to work is I like to have a neat document and a really messy working document. So I would copy the outline and then have the copy be kind of my messy working document. And then everything that I wanted to keep, I would transfer over into the neat document, into its assigned place. So do whatever works for you. I know my friend, they use a color coding system. So they would work in one document, but they would start out writing everything in orange, and that was their working color. And then they would change the color of their paragraphs or certain parts of the text into different colors to signify different purposes. So green was okay, this part is done. Red as in this needs to be revised, this needs to be reviewed. They'd had a whole color coding system, and that worked for them. So again, whatever works for you, but at least have a system that works. And also it's okay if that changes throughout the process, because you will change throughout the process of writing a thesis. I'm trying to hold tight onto things that do not really seem to work for you anymore. I've said this before, writing your thesis, especially this part of writing a thesis, is really fucking boring. So whatever you can do to make it interesting for you, make it fun for you, or just spark a little bit more joy when opening your document, do that. Just make sure you always save. So I would like have my outline here, and then I would open up my database with all the notes, and then I go through each chapter and bullet point what I think needs to be in there. Yeah, also you can put your literature review into the document as well. So that's nice. It's always nice to see your word count go up after you dropped in your literature review. This time really benefits from having a routine. I wished I would have gotten into a routine earlier. I was basing my schedule off of vibes and being unmedicated and unregulated. I gave myself a lot more unnecessary stress and I rushed myself. I had time and I just didn't use it, you know? So if I had to redo it again, I would start when I needed to start. Really, I would start when I needed to start and try to get myself into a routine. Have like fixed days, fixed hours where I would sit down and research or write. The more you do it, the more you train your body to get used to certain days and times where you are working on your thesis. Your body and your mind will anticipate it, and then the easier it will be for you to get into the working zone. Also, brown noise helps, Pomodoro helps. That for me, it has really helped me stay focused, especially when you're still trying to get used to stuff. Because I had less time to work on my thesis, it also really fucked with the quality of my thesis in the end. Yes, I did have a really good grade, like a 7.9, that's crazy. But I feel like had I given myself a lot more time, had I used the time better, I think my grade would have be higher. Like the main points of criticism on my thesis that my supervisor and my second assessor had was that my first half of my thesis, so the background research and my literature review, were really well written. So then when it came to the analysis, because that part I didn't really have much time for, really, that part didn't compare to the first parts in terms of quality. So the more time you give yourself, or the better you allocate your time in the time span that you've been given, the better the end result will be. The mid-May is when I started to really get into a routine. But what really helped me was having a friend to body double with me. And for any neurodivergent out there, especially for ADHD, having someone with you in the same room, doing their own things, but like, you know, being with you while you're working on your thesis is really, really helpful. So my friend and I, we would meet up 2 to 3 times a week, fixed hours, fixed places, which really helped. Not only was it like silently working on our thesis, it was also the ability to riff off of each other with things when we were stuck, when we had needed some advice, when we needed feedback, when we just needed to vent about our emotions. And yeah, I think that really helped me make a lot of progress in my thesis writing. And I think especially if you have friends who are also writing their theses, you can make it like a really fun group activity, I guess, where you are able to talk with each other and figure things out with each other, but also have that time to work on your thesis as well. Fun and productivity can be, you know, can come together. So speaking of fun, don't be afraid to take days off. Don't be afraid to take evenings off. Don't be afraid to skip a writing session. Give yourself also time to like live. I know your thesis is very important, but your thesis isn't going anywhere. The deadlines aren't going anywhere. You know, when you plan and spend your time accordingly, make sure you also plan in time to have fun. Because again, this is going to be the hardest part of the process. 1, you're doing the same thing every day. 2, it feels like you're not making progress, even though you are. And 3, there are going to be a lot of emotional ups and downs because you're going to be bored and you're going to be frustrated, and that's all part of the process. So yeah, make sure you have those times. Don't forget to live. So while writing your thesis, you have planned your days with body doubling, fixed routine, you have your days off. I would also plan a day in the week to not look at like your primary sources or your secondary sources, but to look at what you have. Look at your notes, look at your working document, and reflect. Where are you? Do you understand what you're reading? And if not, where are the pain points? If you were to summarize this part, how would you do that? And is someone else able to understand it? This could be like your little editing days. I think what I did was because I had such little time to work on my thesis, I would use all my editing for like the last week and a half, which is very overwhelming and very a lot. So if I were to redo this, I would edit once a week. I think that would really help with the final edit at the end. And then, you know, try to make a summary of that session. Like, okay, what things didn't I understand? What things do I understand? Where do I need more research? What is actually relevant? Because I know during your thesis writing, you're also going to put in a bunch of shit that's like, okay, this was a rabbit hole I really didn't need to go into, and it's actually deviating from my main research question. Try to write that little summary as if you're trying to explain it to someone else. Even better yet, try to explain it to someone else. Like I said, we had 7 weeks to work towards our first deadline. Hopefully by now, you have written a substantial amount. I would like to spend the last 2 weeks before the first deadline trying to not look at any new information anymore and trying to work with what I have. Now I know some people are able to just because I know a friend of mine, she already was mostly finished before her first deadline. So if you're there, fantastic, phenomenal. I know myself. But at this point, I do hope that I've at least largely written, mostly finished my literature review and my additional research and my analysis. I always leave the introduction and conclusions to the final stretch. But if I've written parts in there too, fab. If not, at least I want to make sure that the body is bodying. That's where I would want to get the most advice on, because the first deadline for me was one where my supervisor would give me feedback on. First draft submitted, and we have already planned a Zoom meeting for feedback. So during that time, I would not stop writing. Maybe I'd give myself a day off to yay, play. I would then immediately just go back into the grind again of researching, writing, keeping onto the routine and just continue writing. Yes, I still need to get the feedback, but I can apply that feedback afterwards as well. So I want to make sure that while I'm in this period of waiting for the feedback session, I am still making steady progress. And another thing, I think I probably should have said this before, but when it comes to your first draft deadline, and with any deadline ever in your academic career, make sure you hand something in. Even if it's not a lot, make sure you hand something in. And this is for the sole reason of letting your supervisor know where you are, but also kind of giving you a reality check of where the fuck you are. It also helps build trust between you and your supervisor, because if you are willing to be vulnerable and show your supervisor where you're at in the process, they are more willing to help you with where they can. Your supervisor is here to help you where they can. And so it's very important that you allow them to help you by showing up, submitting your stuff for your deadlines, being at the presentations, keeping in contact with your supervisor for any questions that you feel you cannot really figure out by yourself. Keep your supervisor in the loop. They've been in this field for way longer than maybe you were alive. There's a lot of knowledge that they have. And again, just a gentle reminder, your whole thesis is not about perfection. So you don't have to submit perfection in. It's about curiosity. So your feedback is in, you've had your feedback session. I had a Zoom meeting and she had a written version of my feedback as well. So during the Zoom meeting, I would take notes. Then afterwards, I went out and got ice cream. What I would do is I would continue working and then save my supervisor's notes for my editing days. Based on that, again, I'd make my little summary. Also, I would plan out my next study sessions and what I need to work on. So how to work on your thesis? My advice would be work chaotically. So I am someone, I really like to work linearly, but that is not going to work. Nah. I think the best way to work on your thesis is to hop around as chaotically as possible. Go from introduction to analysis, from analysis to methodology, from methodology to editing your literature review, go to conclusion, from conclusion, go to your additional background research. Try to jump around as much as you can. I think it's really important to not think linearly in your research, because your research is not linear. And also, it helps you refresh your memory from things you have written a month before or 2 months before. In the last month, I would do the whole chaotic thing, which should have done earlier, but hindsight, I realized, oh shit, I've written this a few months ago that really connects with this, or oh shit, I forgot that I've written this 2 months ago. Is it still relevant? It's really important to have all the information as active and fresh in your mind as possible, because again, it's not a seminar paper where you're working on weeks, which is relatively short. Some of us work 2 weeks on it. No judgment. Come on now. You are going to spend such a long time with your thesis. There is so much information that you've written 2-3 months ago. You're not going to remember, right? So it's really good to jump in between. It helps with your brain not getting stuck in seeing things a certain way. Also, when it comes to making connections, mind map. So what I also like to do is like every 2-3 weeks, I would print out my current draft of my thesis, walk away from the screen, and I'm just going to read it and write in the margins and try to like engage with the text. I would criticize myself in the margins. I'm going to argue with myself in the margins. I'm going to compliment myself in the margins. There's going to be a couple of what the fucks in there. See where I am not understanding myself. See where I am missing information. See where I feel like, oh, bitch, it's too much. This is too much. You're going off track. Stop it here right now. This could also be done in an editing day. I just thought it was very valuable to, print out my document every 2 to 3 weeks and see where I'm at. So just like to remind you, keep writing as yourself. Again, I know generative AI is very tempting to use during this process, but again, your thesis it's all about you. And we all know generative AI is not you. And just because it sounds nice and it reads nice doesn't mean it carries any substance. Another gentle reminder is don't be afraid of yourself and don't be ashamed of yourself. Resources. I've talked a lot about just like my process, but what resources did I use aside from my supervisor, my friends, and my librarian? The academic phrase bank really helped me get sentences started. I use thesaurus a lot because I'm a very descriptive writer, right? So I tend to repeat certain words again and again and again and again, and having synonyms help. I also used the examples my supervisor gave me. She would upload some examples of previous works or like excerpts of previous works from a few years ago that really helped me get a clearer visual on what it is that my university asks of me and what specifically my supervisor likes to see in a thesis. So also looking at the secondary sources I already gathered, picking out my favorite ones, just looking at how they've written things. I have always learned by example. And so having a shit ton of examples really helped seeing how I could do stuff, how I could word things, how I could connect things. I really struggle with transitioning from paragraph to paragraph, from idea to idea. So having these examples there, just trying to see how they do it. And also the academic phrase bank helps in that as well. I'm also a visual learner, so going onto YouTube, seeing how the other people did it helped. Scrolling through the reels of researchers who give tips and tricks. Same thing with TikToks. It all really helped. Different perspective, different methods, and different understandings of how people approach writing an academic paper, and the thesis specifically really helped me in my own process and figuring out my own system and what worked for me. So what also was really difficult for me was translating. Translating my comprehension to paper, translating my comprehension to someone who doesn't understand it. And it helped having people around me to talk to. It helped doing those presentations. I would definitely keep that in, make it like a weekly thing, try to at least have one person a week that I could talk to so that I too could understand where I am with my comprehension and my ability to translate that, even if I will go through all stages of shame. Like, it's very vulnerable to share what you know. The best way to really get better at it is to just practice. Now we are nearing the end, the final deadline. Spooky. The stress is amping up. Your sleep quality is getting worse and worse. And you might feel like you want to give up. Don't give up. Ooh, the last stretch is always the hardest, but don't give up because you're almost there. In the words of the fabulous Tiana, the last week, ideally the last 2 weeks, but knowing me, I would say the last week. That's where I would completely cut off adding anything else to my document. Now it's just all about making it submission ready. Ideally, I would have already done a lot of the mini editing along the way, so there isn't really a bulk to edit at the end of it. There's still going to be a substantial amount, but the last week I would just just only have my document open. Start with printing it out, going over it, maybe even looking at it from kind of embodying a different person, right? Let's say you're someone who's a big fan of the topic. How would you read your thesis? If you are someone who's really critical of your topic and already is ready to slam down your argument, maybe you could even thesis exchange with your friends and feedback that way, and then you doing it for them could be a very interactive and fun thing to do. Could also be very helpful. Have a night off, take a long walk, and then the next day come back look at that document again, see if you still agree with some of the thing that's on there, and then go onto computer, start implementing all that feedback into the document. For me, basically, I would do that just back and forth. And the last 3 days really focus on the technicalities of everything. So word count, title page, spell checks, your bibliography, is your bibliography in it? Looking into the nitty gritty, dotting your I's, crossing your T's. Hopefully I'll be able to submit it the day before the deadline, but it's okay if it's still on the day of the deadline, as long as it's before the time of the deadline. Before deadline, before I'm really ready to submit, I'm going to print it out one more time. I'm going to go through it one last time, give myself 15 minutes. If I can still change something within 15 minutes, I will allow myself to do that. If I know it's going to take me longer than that, I'm leaving it alone. I'm leaving it alone. Then, after I've done all of that, I would grab my camera, turn it on, and film myself submitting my thesis. And that, my kings, is what I would do if I had to redo my undergraduate thesis. I think the main takeaways would be start on time, make it a habit, make writing a habit, and lean on your community. Oh, and also, don't be afraid nor ashamed of yourself. We've talked about it a little bit before, but now with the increasing use of generative AI outside, but also now increasingly more inside academia, I think there lies so much value and power behind your voice. And I think that we really need that in the world. I think one of the coolest things is just to see the progress of your thesis through all the notes, through your database, through your drafts, through the presentations. It is visible, and it's only really visible at the end of the road after submission, right? You can see your growth. It's visible and it's traceable. For me personally, I saw myself grow in critical thinking. I saw myself grow in my ability to translate. My own comprehension of the topic really grew. My writing really grew. I can see it and I can trace it. Like it's really funny because I can see where things started clicking, and I can also see where I started talking shit out of my ass to make up the word count. So on some final words, I have written down a little piece that I would like to read out because I don't think I can do it from the top of my head. So apologies. Yeah, I have been really interested in the topic of alchemy lately. I know, where is this going? Where is this going? Stick with me here. When you are writing your thesis, you are essentially going through the same process the alchemist went through. Starting with an assignment description and maybe a vague idea on what it is you want to write about, and turn that into a fully fleshed out 30-page research paper showcasing your understanding of the topic, how you applied it, and making it so your audience knows what it is you're talking about without needing any prior knowledge. In other words, turning lead into gold. And that gold weighs heavy, made up of the total word count of every note and every torn piece of paper hidden in your notebook and saved into your database, the hours accumulated researching during your commute, tucked away in quiet corners of study halls and libraries, the amount of conversations you've had with your peers, killing your darlings in endless explanations, the moments you were on the verge of giving up to then open up your document and continue working out of spite, to every time you talked out of your ass to fill up the word count of the day, and every time it just clicked. Because even for the alchemist, it was never actually about the gold. It was about the process that made the gold, the experience, the teachings, and its challenges. The gold is the process as much as it is the thesis itself. And with that, dear kings, I will leave you. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to spend time with me. Leave your little gold nugget into the comment section, and I will see you in the next one. Matane.